The tap-tap-tap of Victoria Marsh's manicured nails against the glass table was the first sound that truly registered, a rhythmic prelude to the surgical cut she was about to make. She sat perfectly composed, a sharp, unyielding presence in the executive conference room, her gaze fixed on me with an almost clinical detachment. Owen, the CFO she'd imported from a chain notorious for gutting operational staff, sat beside her, already poised with his pen. His uneasy posture, the faint sheen of sweat on his forehead, betrayed the unspoken truth: something ugly was about to unfold. Victoria didn't waste time on pleasantries. A manila folder slid across the polished surface, its contents laid bare on the first page: a 20% salary reduction, effective immediately. The corporate jargon that followed: compensation realignment to market standards, industry benchmarking analysis, strategic cost optimization initiative, did little to mask the blunt message. They thought I was overpaid. They believed someone cheaper could do what I did. The analysis shows your compensation is significantly above market average for your role, Victoria stated, her voice smooth, condescending. I looked up from the folder, meeting her gaze. Market average for what, exactly? I asked, my voice betraying none of the tremor I felt deep inside. She blinked, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. She'd expected quiet acceptance, a nod of understanding. For logistics operations directors in the pharmaceutical distribution sector, she replied, recovering quickly. I almost laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that died before it reached my lips. The market average you're citing covers single facility directors, I explained, my words measured, deliberate. Warehouse managers overseeing maybe 50 people and regional delivery coverage. Not nationwide cold chain networks with FDA compliance requirements, temperature-critical biologics worth millions, and specialized carrier relationships that took a decade to build. Her eyes hardened. I'm sure your contributions are valuable, but the board has approved this adjustment. It's not a negotiation. Owen quickly interjected, his tone a practiced sympathy. We've paired the adjustment with performance-based incentives tied to cost-saving initiatives. There's real upside potential here. They wanted to cut my base pay and then make me earn it back, by finding more ways to optimize a system I'd already refined over 12 years. And if I don't accept? I asked, keeping my voice level. Victoria leaned back, a faint smile playing on her lips. Then we'd need to explore alternative staffing solutions. People who can execute similar responsibilities at a more sustainable cost level. The threat, wrapped in corporate packaging. Accept the cut or be replaced. As if 12 years of intimate knowledge of Polaris biologistics could be swapped out like a printer cartridge. You'll have my decision by Friday, I said, rising from my seat. Her eyebrows arched slightly, a hint of genuine surprise. She'd anticipated capitulation. We'd prefer to resolve this today, she pressed. The adjustment needs to be implemented across the division, and delays create complications. I'm sure they do, I replied, turning to leave. I didn't look back, but I heard Owen's whispered comment, too quiet to discern. Victoria's response, however, cut through the air, clear and dismissive: he'll come around. They always do when they realize they have nowhere else to go. We'd see about that. I didn't go straight home. I drove aimlessly for a while, the raw injustice of it all churning in my gut. I ended up at a quiet overlook, staring at the distant city lights, a silent testament to the years I'd poured into an invisible work. 12 years of building a system that kept medications viable, that prevented disasters no one ever saw because I'd caught them before they happened. And they wanted to cut my pay by 20% because a spreadsheet said I was above average. When I finally walked through the door, Jules was in the kitchen, the scent of dinner filling the air. She took one look at my face, put down her spatula. "That bad?" she asked softly. I sank into a chair at the kitchen table, the energy draining from me, and told her everything. She listened, her brown eyes steady and unblinking. When I finished, a long silence hung between us. "So, what are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know yet. I need to figure out our financial situation first. See how long we can survive if I walk away without something else lined up. She nodded, already pragmatic. Okay, let's look at the numbers together after dinner. Figure out where we actually stand. That was Jules, no panic, just practical next steps, a quiet confidence that together, we'd find a way. The numbers weren't encouraging. We had savings, but not enough for indefinite unemployment. Mortgage, car payments, insurance, they all added up faster than we liked to admit. For months, maybe 5 if we stripped everything to the bone, living on rice and anxiety. There's another option, I said, hating the words even as they left my mouth. I could ask my family. Jules's gaze sharpened. She knew my history with them, my older brother Wade who'd inherited the car dealership, how they viewed my career as a passing phase. I hadn't asked them for anything in 15 years. If you think that's the right move, she said carefully. I tried. The next evening, Wade's truck was already in my mother's driveway. My mother offered coffee, which I declined. Wade was sprawled on the couch like he owned the place. I kept it simple, explained the salary cut, the job hunt, asked for a short-term loan. Wade laughed before I'd even finished. So, the big pharma genius finally comes crawling back, he sneered. What happened to your fancy career being the smart play? It's a temporary situation. I'm not asking for a handout. I'm asking for a loan. Right. A loan. He made air quotes with his fingers. And what happens when Jules figures out she married a guy who can't even keep a job? You think she's going to stick around while you figure your life out? My mother looked into her cup, silent. She said nothing. That's not going to happen, I said, forcing the words through clenched teeth. Sure it's not. Wade leaned forward, a cruel glint in his eyes. Face it, little brother. You picked the wrong path. Should have stayed in the family business like Dad wanted. But no, you had to go prove something. How's that working out for you? I waited, a silent plea for my mother to intervene, to say anything. She didn't. I stood up. Thanks for your time. That's it? Wade called after me. You're just going to leave? Classic. Always running from reality. I didn't respond. I just walked out and drove home. Jules was waiting. How'd it go? About how you'd expect. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I never liked Wade anyway. His cologne smells like desperation and hair gel. I laughed then, a genuine laugh that cracked something loose in my chest for the first time in 2 days. All right, she said, taking my hand. So, we do this the hard way. You start looking for jobs tomorrow. I'll pick up extra hours at the clinic. We figure it out together. You sure? Dominic, we've been doing things together for 9 years. This isn't any different. It's just a bigger problem, and we're pretty good at problems. I went back to Polaris, intending to stay, to quietly job hunt until something better came along. That plan lasted exactly 6 days. The small humiliation started immediately, my long-held parking spot reassigned to Owen, my office moved to a windowless storage room beside the forklift charging station, access to systems restricted. Terrence, my buddy from the Memphis floor, found me in my new office. Dude, they moved you next to the forklift charging station. That hum is going to make you lose your mind within a week. Already on day 4, I admitted. I've started having dreams about beeping. In the dreams, the beeps are trying to tell me something important, but I can never quite understand what. That's dark, man. The real humiliation arrived on day 6. Victoria called an all-hands operations meeting, unusual for someone who normally avoided the operations floor like it might soil her designer clothes. Every regional manager, floor supervisor, and logistics coordinator was packed into the largest conference room. Terrence, standing at the back, gave me a look that screamed, "Something bad is coming." Victoria stood at the front, a PowerPoint slide behind her proclaiming, "Operational excellence, a new direction." She spoke of fresh perspectives and modernizing our approach to eliminate the inefficiencies that have been holding us back. Inefficiencies. She was talking about the very systems that had prevented millions in losses, systems I had built. Effective immediately, I'm pleased to announce that we've brought in a consultant who will be overseeing our operational restructuring, she continued. Many of you may know him from his previous industry work. Please welcome Garrett. A man in his early 30s walked in, slick suit, confident smile, handshake-ready posture. Garrett. Everyone in cold chain circles knew him. 3 years ago, his recommendations had cost a competitor $4 million in spoiled inventory and triggered an FDA investigation. Now he was here, ready to restructure our operations. Garrett will be working closely with all of you, Victoria said, looking directly at me, to identify areas where we can modernize and streamline. I expect full cooperation from everyone. After the meeting, Terrence pulled me aside. Garrett Finch? The same Garrett Finch who tanked the Atlantic Corridor project, who got Atlantic Pharma Distribution slapped with an FDA warning letter. The same one. And they're putting him in charge of restructuring our operations? Terrence stared, disbelief etched on his face. Dom, my man, please tell me you have an exit strategy here because this is going to go bad for anyone who stays on the ship. I didn't answer. I didn't have one. Not yet. 2 days later, Garrett called his first implementation meeting. I wasn't invited. I learned about it from a regional manager who'd been explicitly instructed not to tell me. The next morning, I discovered Garrett had recommended eliminating our backup temperature monitoring protocols, the redundant systems I'd designed to catch equipment failures before product loss. He called them duplicative overhead and legacy inefficiencies. I walked straight to Victoria's office. Her assistant tried to block me, citing a full calendar. I walked past her anyway. Victoria looked up from her computer, annoyance flashing in her eyes. Do you have an appointment? No, I said, striding forward. But I have a serious concern about the consultant you hired recommending that we eliminate safety protocols that have saved this company over $3 million in the past 4 years. Her expression remained impassive. Garrett is a highly regarded professional. His recommendations have been thoroughly reviewed and approved by the board. His recommendations are going to result in spoiled pharmaceuticals and potential lawsuits. That's your opinion. That's my 12 years of experience preventing exactly the kind of disasters he's about to cause. A slow smile spread across her face. Speaking of your experience, she said, leaning back in her chair. I've been meaning to discuss something with you. Given your ongoing resistance to the compensation adjustment and your apparent inability to work collaboratively with Garrett, I think it's time we formally transitioned your responsibilities. Meaning what, exactly? Meaning your position will be eliminated effective in 30 days. We'll offer a modest severance package, of course. 2 weeks' pay, and we'd expect you to help make the transition to Garrett smooth during that period. 2 weeks' pay. And they wanted me to spend a full month training the man who was going to dismantle everything I'd built. Training him for free. Something clicked into place. All the anger, the frustration, solidified into a quiet resolve. I'll have my response by end of day, I said. Her eyebrows rose. There's nothing to respond to. This is a notification, not a negotiation. So is your salary cut, I countered. And yet, here we are. I turned and walked out. I didn't resign that day. Instead, I went home and got to work. Jules found me at the kitchen table at 11 p.m., laptop open, surrounded by notes and printouts. You're finally job hunting, she observed. Should have started weeks ago. Better late than never. What am I looking for? Anything in cold chain pharma that isn't run by sociopaths. It's a shorter list than you'd think. The first week was brutal. 14 applications, 3 responses. 2 were automated rejections. 1 phone screen that went nowhere because they wanted someone to relocate to Wisconsin immediately. Week 2 was worse. I expanded my search, considered roles I was clearly overqualified for, questioned every career decision I had made. The silence was deafening. Every night, I lay awake, wondering if I'd made a colossal mistake. Jules kept her promise, picking up extra hours at the clinic. She'd come home exhausted, yet still asked about my day, still found ways to make me laugh. At least you're not getting rejection emails that start with, "Dear valued applicant," she joked one night. That's when you know they really don't care. Small blessings. By week 3, doubt began to creep in. Maybe Victoria was right. Maybe I was just an expensive relic. The whispers came at 3 a.m. *, you overestimated your value. You were foolish. Your pride wrecked everything *. Then Terrence called, his voice booming over the phone. Yo, you still looking? Every day. Getting nowhere. Good, because I just heard something that might change that. You know Danny, worked with us back in 2015, always had snacks? I remembered Danny, sharp supply chain analyst who'd left Polaris for better things. Yeah, I remember him. What about him? He's at Vertex Pharmaceuticals now. Called me yesterday, mentioned they're building a new cold chain division from scratch. Posted the job this week. They're specifically looking for someone with multi-hub experience, someone who understands temperature-critical distribution at scale. Vertex. One of the fastest-growing specialty pharma companies in the country. I'd followed their expansion for years. Polaris had been their third-party logistics provider, handling their cold chain. But now, they were done outsourcing. They wanted to build their own. The moment they did that, they became Polaris's direct competitor. Where'd you hear this? I told you, Danny. He said to tell you if you're interested, apply fast. They're not going to wait around. I applied that night, tailoring my resume. Heard nothing for 8 days. The hope started to wane again. Then the email came, they wanted a phone interview. That interview lasted 45 minutes, real questions about real operational challenges. 3 days later, a video interview with the VP of Supply Chain and the Head of Distribution Planning, 2 hours of technical questions, scenario planning, and opportunities to explain my approach. A week after that, they flew me to their headquarters. For hours with 3 executives who actually listened, asked follow-up questions that showed they understood the complexity. If you had to design a redundant monitoring system for biologics transport, their VP asked toward the end, what would be your top 3 priorities? I talked for 20 minutes, drawing diagrams on their whiteboard, explaining failure points, and describing the predictive models I'd developed. When I finished, the VP looked at his colleagues. Dominic, he said, I'm going to be straight with you. We've interviewed 11 people for this role. You're the first one who actually understood how complicated this is. The first one who talked about prevention instead of just response. They offered me the job 3 days later. Vice President of Cold Chain Operations. Salary 35% higher than what I'd been making at Polaris before Victoria's cut. Full authority to build their national network from scratch, and a leadership team that explicitly valued expertise over politics. I told Jules that night, her eyes shining. You did it. We did it, I corrected. You kept us afloat while I figured this out. That's what we do. The next morning, I walked into Polaris for the last time as their operations director. My resignation letter was already printed. 2 weeks' notice, as required. Victoria's assistant tried to stop me from entering her office. I walked past her again. It was becoming a routine. Victoria looked up, her expression flickering when she saw the envelope. What's this? My resignation. Effective in 2 weeks. For the first time since I'd met her, Victoria looked genuinely surprised. You're resigning now? I've accepted a position with Vertex Pharmaceuticals, Vice President of Cold Chain Operations. I'll be building their national network from the ground up. The color drained from her face. She knew Vertex. Everyone in the industry did. They were the future of specialty pharma distribution. We can discuss the severance terms, she started. I don't want your severance. I want to complete a professional transition and leave. That's all I want from Polaris. She recovered quickly, but not quickly enough to hide the crack in her composure. Fine. I assume you'll cooperate fully with Garrett during the transition. I'll document everything he needs to know, I said. Whether he can actually understand it is a different question. I walked out without looking back. My phone buzzed minutes later. Terrence. Victoria is already in damage control mode. Garrett has no idea what any of your systems actually do. I replied, that's about to become very obvious. My final 2 weeks at Polaris felt like watching a slow-motion car accident. Each day brought new cracks, new evidence that the people in charge had no idea what they were doing. Day 1, Garrett eliminated my temperature alert redundancy system, calling it a cost savings win in his report. Nobody noticed the backup monitoring going offline. Day 3, a refrigeration unit failed at the Kansas City hub. Without backup alerts, the failure went undetected for 6 hours. By morning, $62,000 worth of specialty medications had to be destroyed. Garrett blamed outdated equipment, no one connected his system changes to the failure. Terrence called me, frustration thick in his voice. Garrett is walking around asking everyone why no one noticed the temperature spike. I told him it was because he got rid of the system that would have caught it. You know what he said? What? He told me that's not how monitoring systems work. I asked him how they do work then. He said he'd circle back. Terrence paused. He's never going to circle back, is he? He has no clue what circling back even means. This is bad, Dominic. Really bad. People are scared. By day 5, the damage was spreading. 3 carriers threatened to terminate contracts because Garrett's new scheduling system kept sending incorrect pickup times. The coordination I'd spent years building was falling apart. FDA compliance documentation was falling behind due to improperly filed temperature logs. Danny called during my second week at Vertex. So, you're telling me, he said slowly, that they hired a guy famous for wrecking cold chain operations to restructure their cold chain operations? Exactly what I'm telling you. And they cut your salary because they thought you were too expensive? Danny mused. You know what this reminds me of? It's like firing the pilot mid-flight and asking the guy who sells pretzels to land the plane. And the pretzel guy is confident. That's the scary part. That was a solid comparison. The day before my last day, Polaris's biggest client, a hospital network representing 15% of their monthly volume, called an emergency meeting. Shipments were late or improperly documented. They were considering pulling the entire contract. Victoria, I heard, blamed market conditions and temporary transition challenges. Polaris was put on 60-day probation. My last day at Polaris was quiet. I cleaned out my desk. Terrence found me as I headed for the exit. This is wrong, man, he said, his voice heavy. You built this place. You built everything that actually works here. I built the systems, I replied. The systems belong to the company now. But the knowledge, he said, tapping his own head. That goes where I go. He laughed, but there was little humor in it. How long before the whole thing falls apart? Depends on how many more brilliant ideas Garrett comes up with. My guess? Serious problems within 8 weeks. Major crisis within 12. It took 9 months passed quickly at Vertex. The sense of building, of real purpose, filled the void Polaris had left. I found myself thinking less and less about the old company, focused instead on the tangible future we were shaping. One afternoon, 9 weeks after I'd first stepped into the Vertex offices, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Owen, Victoria's CFO. His voice was strained, a sound that would have been satisfying if I were the kind of person who enjoyed watching others drown. Dominic, I know we didn't leave things on the best terms, but Victoria asked me to reach out about a potential opportunity. I let the silence stretch. We've experienced some coordination challenges, he continued, rushing his words. The board is concerned. They're wondering if you'd consider returning in a consulting capacity. Help stabilize operations. Consulting capacity? We'd offer competitive rates. Very competitive. Owen, I said, keeping my voice level. You cut my salary by 20% because you thought I was overpriced. Then you eliminated my position entirely. What exactly has changed? A long pause. The situation has gotten more complicated than we expected. You mean the $8.4 million in operational losses? I didn't wait for his answer. Owen, I've already heard what's happening. Between a couple of old contacts and that FDA warning letter being public record, it's not exactly a secret. 6 carriers walked. 3 hospital networks pulled their business. Everyone in the industry is talking about it. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. I'm going to pass, I said. But I genuinely appreciate the irony of this phone call. I hung up and went back to building something new. At Vertex, things were different. I had a team that wanted to learn, a leadership structure that valued expertise. When I suggested redundant monitoring systems, no one called them duplicative overhead. When I flagged potential failure points, people took notes. When I disagreed with an executive decision, I was thanked for the input. It took some getting used to. The first few weeks, I kept waiting for the catch, bracing for the dismissive corporate smile. Instead, I got real questions from people who valued expertise. Danny had become a regular collaborator, his analysis complementing my planning. We'd work late sometimes, stress-testing scenarios, building protocols that would actually hold up under pressure, the kind of protocols I'd fought for at Polaris. You know what I keep thinking about? Danny said around week 6. The pretzel guy. Still trying to land the plane. Still pushing buttons, still completely confident, still wondering why nothing's working the way the manual says it should. He shook his head. I heard through some contacts that Garrett quit last week. Apparently, he blamed everyone but himself. Terrence gave his notice at Polaris 2 months after I left. The environment had become unbearable. Every day was putting out fires that shouldn't have started. He called to ask if Vertex was hiring. Send me your resume tonight, I said. He started 3 weeks later, running distribution operations for our entire Southeast region, same responsibilities, but with leadership that listened. Polaris was hemorrhaging. Their quarterly earnings showed $8.4 million in operational losses, spoiled inventory, emergency freight, contract penalties, client chargebacks. 6 major carriers had terminated contracts across multiple lanes. The FDA issued its warning letter. 3 hospital networks, representing nearly 30% of their client base, pulled their business. 6 months after I joined Vertex, our cold chain network went fully operational. On-time delivery exceeded industry averages by 12%. Temperature compliance hit 99.7%. We onboarded 3 major hospital clients who specifically cited our reliability and safety protocols as the deciding factor. The Vertex CEO mentioned at a company town hall that our operational improvements had positioned the company to capture significant market share from struggling competitors. He didn't name Polaris, but everyone in the room understood. Danny found me afterward, grinning. Dude, You basically got a standing ovation without anyone saying your name. That's like stealth recognition. It's the team. I couldn't have built this alone. Sure, but the team doesn't exist without your systems. Take the win, man. You earned it. Jules and I had Terrence and his wife over for dinner that weekend. Thank you for getting him out of Polaris, Terrence's wife said. He was coming home miserable for months. Now he actually talks about his day like he enjoys it. The granola bar ratings continue at Vertex, Terrence confirmed with a grin, though the crisis frequency has dropped a lot. I had to rate a training simulation last week. 4 out of 10. The snack bar selection at headquarters is genuinely disappointing. Honestly, Victoria had done me a favor. She thought she was cutting costs. What she actually did was cut me loose from a place that didn't deserve what I brought to the table anymore. Jules squeezed my hand across the dinner table. She didn't need to say anything at all. We both knew we'd made it through. The mortgage was current. The savings account was rebuilding. The anxiety that had kept us both awake for months was finally fading. Terrence raised his coffee cup to new beginnings. And to whoever invented the granola bar. Months after Polaris's collapse became a certainty, 7 months after I'd first stepped into the Vertex offices, a text message arrived from an unknown number. Hey, little brother. Heard that you landed somewhere good. That's great. Really happy for you. Listen, things have been tough at the dealership. Market's brutal right now. I was wondering if you might be able to help with a short-term situation, just a loan to get through this rough patch. Wade. Asking me for money. I read it twice. The same Wade who'd mocked me, who said Jules would leave me, who'd laughed while I was drowning. Now he was underwater. And somehow, he thought I'd throw him a rope. I deleted the text without responding, blocked the number. For months after that, on a Saturday evening, the doorbell rang. Jules was in the kitchen, I was half watching a game. Neither of us was expecting anyone. I opened the door. My mother stood on the porch, looking tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. Dominic. Hey, Mom. Neither of us moved to hug. That wasn't how we did things. Maybe it never had been. We stood there for a long moment. I know we haven't talked, she started. Wade was out of line that day. I should have stopped him. But you didn't. No, I didn't. She took a deep breath. The dealership is in real trouble. Wade made some bad investments. Extended credit to people who couldn't pay. Took on debt he couldn't handle. The bank is threatening to foreclose. I leaned against the doorframe. And you're here because you need money. I'm here because you're my son. Because I should have been there for you when you needed help and I wasn't. Because I don't know where else to turn. Jules appeared in the hallway behind me, a quiet, solid presence. I looked at my mother for a long moment. I'll think about it, I said finally. Her face brightened. But understand something first. My voice was level. When I asked you for help, I was asking for a loan, breathing room. And Wade used it to mock me, said my wife would leave me. You sat there and watched. I know. I should have. I'll think about it. That's all I'm promising. She nodded. That's more than I deserve. Yeah, it is. She turned to leave, then stopped. Your father would have been proud of you. The career you built on your own terms. I should have said that years ago. I watched her walk to her car and drive away. Some chapters end quietly. Some end with people showing up on your porch asking for what they refuse to give. Either way, what matters is who's beside you when the door finally closes. I got lucky there. Really lucky. Everything else, I earned that the hard way, and I'd do it all again. But after all the battles fought and won, does true victory ever erase the memory of the ground where you once stood alone?